Street boy saves millionaire from certain death. But a shocking secret will change everything. The bustling metropolis roared around Lucas like an unyielding storm. Sirens blared, horns honked, and the chatter of 1,000 lives filled the air. He maneuvered through the sea of lengths, his heart beating wildly. At 12, he was a street boy, scrappy and tough, a survivor in a world that barely noticed him. He scampered about, dodging rain-soaked pedestrians, his thin frame slipping past them like a shadow. Today was different. Today, fate hung in the air like the thick fog that rolled in from the river. Just ahead, a sleek black car pulled up, glistening like a predator in the sun. The windows slid down, revealing Ethan, a millionaire known for his ruthless business tactics. He was handsome, with dark hair slicked back and icy blue eyes that pierced straight through the noise. Lucas usually ignored the rich. They were worlds apart, floating on clouds made of money, while he fought for scraps. Yet something about Ethan drew him in. A glance over his shoulder revealed the chaos building behind Ethan's car. An old woman teetered on the edge of the sidewalk, struggling with her bags. Lucas's instincts kicked in. He dashed forward just as a truck barreled down the street, the driver oblivious. He lunged, arms outstretched, catching the woman's arm and pulling her back just as the truck roared by. The impact rattled his bones, but he didn't care. Relief flooded through him as he turned back to find Ethan staring at him wide-eyed. Before Lucas could catch his breath, the world around him changed. Just like that, he was swept into Ethan's immaculate life. Glittering dinners, gigantic mansions, and a world of privilege spun around him. While uncertainty danced in his mind, he was dazzled by grand parties and diamond chandeliers. But beneath the glitz was a sharp edge. Each moment felt like a fragile glass, ready to shatter. Yet cracks began to form in the surface of his new life. Whispers followed Ethan, rumors of a dark past that haunted him like a ghost. Lucas noted the way Ethan flinched when certain names were mentioned, how his laughter faded too quickly, replaced by shadows in his gaze. Curiosity gnawed at Lucas, and the more he learned, the more intertwined their lives appeared. Then there was the figure lurking in the distance, a shadowy figure Lucas couldn't shake. Someone was always watching. Someone who seemed to connect the threads of their lives. The chill down his spine grew with every winding twist of Ethan's story. Was the billionaire hiding something darker than just a scandalous history? Did Lucas's own mysterious past connect to him in ways he couldn't yet understand? Standing in front of a giant window that overlooked the sparkling city, Lucas felt torn. Should he confront Ethan, risk losing everything he had gained, or keep the unsettling truth buried deep, protecting the few who had taken him in? The sweet taste of opportunity buzzed in his veins, but so did a creeping dread. The weight of loyalty and secrets pressed down on him like the heavy clouds that shrouded the metropolis. He stood at the threshold of his new life, but uncertainty swirled around him like smoke. The bustling city below carried on, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just behind the pretty facade. What was he going to do next? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without any notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming up. And while you're here, hit that powerful like button. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, from which city are you watching? I love getting to know every incredible person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Lucas pressed his forehead against the cool glass, lost in thoughts that tangled like vines in his mind. The city below was alive. Cars zipped by, people rushed to their destinations, and all he could do was wonder about the mystery swirling around Ethan. Should he dig deeper? Should he confront him? Just then, a chilling scream cut through the night. The sound sliced through the air, sharp and raw. It wasn't just any scream. It felt like the cry of someone who had lost everything. Lucas turned suddenly, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. He felt something shift in the atmosphere, a crackle that charged the air. Ethan appeared, a flash of concern crossing his face. He spun toward the sound, his eyes wide, his mouth tightening into a thin line. "Stay here!" he shouted, before darting out of the lavish room and into the chaos below. Lucas hesitated, then followed, fighting through the crowd. He felt others push against him, caught up in rumbling confusion. He reached the streets, where a small crowd had gathered, faces painted with shock. Lucas squeezed in closer, his stomach tightening with dread. And there, in the center of it all, lay a figure on the ground, motionless. It was the old woman he had saved earlier. Her bag scattered like fallen leaves. Panic surged through him. He hadn't just pulled her back from danger. He had unknowingly signed on to a timeline that now felt ominous. "What happened?" Lucas gasped, searching for answers in the crowd. Ethan dropped to his knees next to her, shaking her gently. "Please, someone call for help!" His voice cracked, and Lucas watched as fear turned into outright desperation. Then, just as sirens wailed in the distance, something flickered in the corner of Lucas's eye. A figure emerged from the shadows across the street, tall and cloaked, a dark silhouette that seemed to loom over the gathering like a thundercloud. Instinctively, Lucas's muscles tensed. He narrowed his eyes, unable to shake the feeling that this figure was somehow connected to everything. "Ethan!" Lucas shouted, pointing. But on cue, the figure vanished, melting into the night. "What?" Ethan looked up, brow furrowed with confusion and anger. "What are you talking about?" Before Lucas could explain, a commotion erupted around them. Police cars screeched to a halt. Lights flashing, creating a surreal strobe effect against the evening gloom. Officers rushed forward, pushing through the gathered crowd with stern looks, their presence turning the tense moment into chaos. "Step back!" one officer shouted. "What happened here?" Ethan's expression shifted from panic to something darker, shadowed by secrets. I don't know," he stammered, yet his eyes darted, revealing worry. There was something in his posture, something that made Lucas feel like he barely knew the man who had taken him in. The old woman suddenly gasped, a faint breath returning to her body. Relief washed over the crowd. But that relief turned into gasps of horror as her eyes found Lucas. "You," she croaked, a look of recognition etched into her features. What?" Lucas stumbled back, heart racing. "Cursed," she whispered, fingers trembling. "Cursed to save a monster." The words fell heavy, like stones dropped into water. Lucas felt the world spin beneath him. Everything he thought he understood was unraveling. The connections he was desperate to understand now tangled in shadows and darkness. Ethan's eyes froze as he exchanged a glance with the old woman. And Lucas found himself caught in the web of fear and confusion. The sirens wailed louder, merging with the atmosphere of dread. Lucas glanced back at Ethan. The billionaire was suddenly a man shrouded in secrets. He felt the ground shift beneath his feet, the rift growing wider. "What do you mean?" Lucas's voice trembled, caught in the throes of revelation. But before either could answer, the figure re-emerged at the edge of the crowd, the darkness around them feeling alive. The truth was creeping in, clutching at the edges of their lives. And in that moment, Lucas realized nothing would ever be the same again. The air thickened with tension, a pulse of fear that tightened around Lucas's chest. The old woman's tremor lingered in his mind. Her haunting words echoed like a chant. "Cursed to save a monster." They hung in the crowd at night like a ghost. He searched Ethan's face, but all he found was a mix of shock and confusion. His blue eyes wide and glassy. Before he could think, the crowd shifted again, jostling closer to the scene. A sharp gasp split the air. Lucas turned, adrenaline coursing through him. The dark figure, a tall silhouette, was back, standing just beyond the police barriers, a shadow in the flickering strobe lights. "Who are you?" Lucas shouted, heart racing, but the figure remained silent, its presence electric and unsettling. Ethan's fingers clenched into fists. "Stay back," he barked, his voice shaky as he stood up, blocking Lucas from the view. But Lucas couldn't look away. The figure stepped forward, and the crowd shrank back, gasps rippling through the onlookers. In the streetlights, it finally came into focus. A woman, wearing a long, tattered coat that danced around her in the night wind. Her face was obscured, but her eyes glinted with a fierce intensity, every bit as cold as the night. "Ethan!" she cried, her voice jagged like shattered glass. "You can't hide any more. The truth is coming." Lucas glanced back at Ethan, who had gone pale like a ghost. "What does she mean?" Lucas pressed, blood roaring in his ears. He could feel something shifting, as if the ground beneath him was eroding. "Keep away from her, Lucas," Ethan shouted, desperation lacing his tone. "She's lying. She wants to manipulate you." "Manipulate?" The woman stepped closer, voice rising, cracking with the weight of her words. "You think this is about you? About your fragile world? It's about so much more." A sickening churn twisted in Lucas's stomach. The crowd began murmuring, anxiety gripping their faces. The sirens blurred into a cacophony, an urgency that felt palpable in the air. Ethan turned his back, shaking his head briskly. No, she's wrong. She's just trying to ruin everything." His voice was pleading, almost frantic. But Lucas felt the unease growing heavy at the pit of his being. Ruin? The woman stepped closer, her body emanating a palpable energy. Lucas, you don't understand. The old lady, the curse. You are tied to him, tied to his sins. The world swayed. Lucas felt lightheaded. Everything he thought he knew came crashing down. Sins? What sins? He could barely breathe, his heart thudding against his ribs. Ethan, what have you done? Ethan looked back, panic flashing across his face, the play of shadow and light making him seem more shadow than man. I didn't, he stuttered. It's not what you think. I didn't ask for any of this. The tension exploded. The woman ripped off her hood, revealing a face lined with anguish and anger. Your fate is intertwined, Lucas. You saved someone who shouldn't be alive. You'll pay the price. All at once, sirens erupted, drowning out the words. The crowd surged, panic palpable like smoke, as officers tried to restore order. In that chaos, the woman's voice rose above the noise. You want the truth? Your real father, he's the monster. The world crumbled around Lucas, every fibre of his being igniting with disbelief. What? He choked, his vision blurring, a heavy weight crushing down on him. The truth? Was this some sick game? But the woman's face, etched with pain and sincerity, made him hesitate. Ethan's gaze fell, shadows crossing his features like clouds overtaking the sun. In that heartbeat, Lucas felt every connection shatter, every thread of certainty disintegrate. No, he whispered, but the words hung, heavy and suffocating. The crowd surged again, the atmosphere electrified with confusion and fear. Lucas's heart raced, caught between betrayal and the need for truth. The world spun faster, and in the center of it all, monstrous secrets gathered, ready to explode. What he would find next was a twisted journey into shadows he wasn't ready to face. He gazed at Ethan, searching for answers, but all he found was silent, cold fear staring back at him. What was happening? And what would he do next? The world crumbled around Lucas, every fibre of his being igniting with disbelief. No, he whispered, but the words hung heavy and suffocating. The woman's voice echoed in his ears, turning his thoughts into a whirlpool of terror and confusion. Ethan stared at him, his eyes wide and uncomprehending, like a deer caught in headlights. Suddenly, a piercing scream sliced through the night air, cutting through the confusion like a knife. It wasn't just panic, it was terror, raw and insatiable. Heads turned, eyes darted. Lucas felt a jolt of fear shoot through him. What now? He thought. The crowd surged, a wave of bodies reacting to the noise. Then, just as abruptly as it began, a loud crash followed. Rattling the ground beneath them, a black sedan careened into the crowd from the street. Its tires screeching, metal on metal, shrieked like a wounded animal. Chaos erupted. People screamed, darting in every direction, their faces painted with fear. Lucas froze, heart pounding as the car's headlights flickered like a demonic spotlight. In that moment, everything blurred. The woman's accusation, Ethan's pleading eyes, the old woman's gasp. Ethan shouted, "Get back!" He pushed Lucas behind him, his body a wall of urgency. But Lucas couldn't look away from the car. It veered again, almost losing control. And in that instant, an icy clarity filled his mind. The woman, the one who knew secrets, they had to be connected. Then everything changed. The car struck a lamppost with an echoing thud, and suddenly, like a play being reset, the tension shifted. The trunk burst open, flying wide, and from it poured a rush of papers, documents swirling like autumn leaves. But it was what came next that took Lucas's breath away. Out stepped a young girl, no older than 10, her eyes wide and haunted. Dishevelled hair hung around her face. But the moment she spotted Ethan, her whole demeanour shifted. "Daddy!" she cried, rushing toward him, fear melting into desperate relief. The world around Lucas tilted on its axis. "Daddy?" The word echoed hollow within him, shaking the foundations of his understanding. He turned toward Ethan, who looked bewildered, a storm brewing in his eyes. "Ella!" Ethan's voice was softer than Lucas had ever heard, trembling like a leaf in the wind. He dropped to his knees, arms stretching out to embrace the girl. Lucas's heart raced. "What?" he gasped, fighting to understand. How could this be? The billionaire had a child? "Stay away from her!" the woman shouted, stepping forward, her face contorted with pain and fury. "You're in danger, Ella! He's the monster!" A hush fell over the crowd. Eyes darted between Ethan, the girl, and the woman, as if caught in a surreal tableau. Lucas's mind was spinning. "Monster?" Ella echoed, looking frightened but confused. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and suddenly, Lucas was flooded with a rush of compassion. She was just a kid, a child, caught in a storm of adult chaos. But it was too much. Everything was too much. The tension wrapped tight around Lucas's chest, squeezing as panic rushed back in. "Your father? Is he?" His voice shook. Ethan stood up, anguish lining his face. "No! I'm trying to protect you both. This isn't what it seems." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Once the truth is out, it won't matter how much you try to protect her, Ethan. She needs to know." The crowd began to murmur, uncertainty feeding the chaos. Lucas felt himself teeter on the edge of something monumental. Truth and deceit woven together in an intricate dance of shadows. "Ella, come here!" Ethan reached for her again, but Ella recoiled, fear expanding in her wide eyes. It all felt unreal. Lucas glanced at the dark figure, the woman still standing with a fire in her eyes. The truth was around them, thick and suffocating, pulling taut as the world began to shake under their feet. "Lucas!" Ethan called, desperation straining his voice as he reached out, bewildered and scared. "You need to help me. We need to get out of here. She's dangerous." But all Lucas could do was stare, frozen in the storm of revelations. The monster? The girl? Everything he thought he knew crumbled. Suddenly, it wasn't just about him anymore. "Lucas!" Ethan shouted again, but his voice fell into the swelling murmur. Everything was spinning out of control, and Lucas felt it pull him in. He wrestled with the mounting questions. He had to make a choice. But nothing was as it seemed. And in that moment, he realized that he was at the center of a web he barely understood. And the monster, it was lurking in the shadows, waiting for its moment. The world crumbled around Lucas, every fibre of his being igniting with disbelief. "No," he whispered, but the words hum heavy and suffocating. The woman's voice echoed in his ears, turning his thoughts into a whirlpool of terror and confusion. Ethan stared at him, his eyes wide and uncomprehending, like a deer caught in headlights. Suddenly, a piercing scream sliced through the night air, cutting through the confusion like a knife. It wasn't just panic. It was terror, raw and insatiable. Heads turned, eyes darted. Lucas felt a jolt of fear shoot through him. What now? He thought. The crowd surged, a wave of bodies reacting to the noise. Then, just as abruptly as it began, a loud crash followed, rattling. The ground beneath them! A black sedan careened into the crowd from the street, its tires screeching. Metal on metal shrieked like a wounded animal. Chaos erupted. People screamed, darting in every direction, their faces painted with fear. Lucas froze, heart pounding, as the car's headlights flickered like a demonic spotlight. In that moment, everything blurred. The woman's accusation, Ethan's pleading eyes, the old woman's gasp. Ethan shouted, "Get back!" He pushed Lucas behind him, his body a wall of urgency. But Lucas couldn't look away from the car. It veered again, almost losing control, and in that instant, an icy clarity filled his mind. The woman, the one who knew secrets, they had to be connected. Then everything changed. The car struck a lamppost with an echoing thud, and suddenly, like a play being reset, the tension shifted. The trunk burst open, flying wide, and from it poured a rush of papers, documents swirling like autumn leaves. But it was what came next that took Lucas's breath away. Out stepped a young girl, no older than 10, her eyes wide and haunted. Dishevelled hair hung around her face, but the moment she spotted Ethan, her whole demeanour shifted. "Daddy!" she cried, rushing toward him. Fear melting into desperate relief. The world around Lucas tilted on its axis. "Daddy?" A word echoed hollow within him, shaking the foundations of his understanding. He turned toward Ethan, who looked bewildered, a storm brewing in his eyes. "Ella." Ethan's voice was softer than Lucas had ever heard, trembling like a leaf in the wind. He dropped to his knees, arms stretching out to embrace the girl. Lucas's heart raced. "What?" he gasped, fighting to understand. How could this be? The billionaire had a child? "Stay away from her!" the woman shouted, stepping forward, her face contorted with pain and fury. "You're in danger, Ella. He's the monster." A hush fell over the crowd. Eyes darted between Ethan, the girl, and the woman, as if caught in a surreal tableau. Lucas's mind was spinning. "Monster?" Ella echoed, looking frightened but confused. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and suddenly Lucas was flooded with a rush of compassion. She was just a kid, a child caught in a storm of adult chaos. But it was too much. Everything was too much. The tension wrapped tight around Lucas's chest, squeezing as panic rushed back in. "Your father? Is he?" His voice shook. Ethan stood up, anguish lining his face. "No! I'm trying to protect you both. This isn't what it seems." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Once the truth is out, it won't matter how much you try to protect her, Ethan. She needs to know." The crowd began to murmur, uncertainty feeding the chaos. Lucas felt himself teeter on the edge of something monumental. Truth and deceit woven together in an intricate dance of shadows. "Ella, come here!" Ethan reached for her again, but Ella recoiled, fear expanding in her wide eyes. It all felt unreal. Lucas glanced at the dark figure, the woman still standing with a fire in her eyes. The truth was around them, thick and suffocating, pulling taut as the world began to shake under their feet. "Lucas!" Ethan called, desperation straining his voice as he reached out, bewildered and scared. "You need to help me! We need to get out of here! She's dangerous!" But all Lucas could do was stare, frozen in the storm of revelations. The monster? The girl? Everything he thought he knew crumbled. Suddenly, it wasn't just about him anymore. "Lucas!" Ethan shouted again, but his voice fell into the swelling murmur. Everything was spinning out of control, and Lucas felt it pull him in. He wrestled with the mounting questions. "Zaddy!" Ella cried again, but this time her voice was different, barely above a whisper. "It's not just you." The crowd went silent. Ella's brow furrowed, and she took a step toward the woman, her tiny feet stirring dust. You're not just an angry stranger. You're my mum." The crowd gasped. Lucas's heart dropped. It felt like ice in his veins. The shock rippled through him. The woman looked stunned, a wall of emotions crashing over her features. "Ella!" she breathed, stepping forward hesitantly, arms reaching out, torn between joy and fear. But just as their eyes locked, a crackle of energy surged through the night. The ground shuddered, like they stood on the brink of something monumental. And Lucas realized, in that instant, the secrets wound tighter. The monster didn't just live in the shadows. It was inside their intertwined lives, waiting to erupt. The realization locked in his throat. "What about the curse?" he croaked, feeling the weight of it all crashing down. "What does this mean?" The crowd held its breath, a statue of confusion around him. The world felt fragile, like the glass he'd feared would shatter. And then the woman's gaze turned steely. "Ha ha 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 ha! Fixing on Lucas. It means you are one of us, but not who you think you are." Her voice was low, charged with a truth that shook the very foundation of everything Lucas had built. A new tension snapped in the air, there, under. The weight of revelations. Nothing would ever be the same again. The world was shifting, crumbling around Lucas. And just as he thought he could catch a breath, the unexpected came crashing down again. You are one of us, but not who you think you are. The woman's words pierced through him like shards of glass. He staggered back, mind racing. He thought he understood the chaos of his life, the darkness surrounding Ethan. But this revelation flipped everything upside down. "What do you mean?" he demanded, uncertainty swelling inside him, battling with a flicker of hope. Ella's small face twisted in confusion, looking between her father and the woman, her innocent eyes wide. "What's going on? I don't understand." Her voice trembled, and Lucas felt a rush of protectiveness toward her. She was just a child caught in this web of secrets that seemed to grow tighter with every heartbeat. Before anyone could respond, a loud crash echoed through the streets, followed by screams piercing the night air. Lucas instinctively turned. His heart raced as he saw a figure stumbling out of the darkness, clutching a bloodied hand. A man fell to the ground, panic spreading through the crowd like fire. "Someone call an ambulance!" a voice shouted from the chaos. Ethan's eyes widened, and in that fleeting moment, he darted toward the man on the ground. "Stay back, Lucas!" he shouted over his shoulder, urgency painted on his face. "Stay with Ella," Lucas felt the ground shift beneath him, the tension crackling like electricity in the air. The words "live" and "die" came screaming unbidden into his mind. He glanced at the little girl, now shivering. "Ella, you need to stay with me," Lucas urged, forcing himself to stay calm. The woman stared at Ethan and then back at Lucas. "He's too late. They're coming for him. For both of you." Just then, more shadows slinked from the corners of the street. Figures draped in dark clothing. Faces obscured. Lucas's heart raced as he sensed a storm of unease ripple through the gathered crowd. "What do you mean?" Lucas asked, fear mingling with anger. "Why are they coming?" The woman's expression hardened. "They know what he did, and they want to finish what he started." Lucas could feel the heat rising, his breath hitching. What did he do? His voice cracked, but the chaos exploded before he could separate truth from the swirling confusion. Before anyone could react, a blaring siren pierced the air, and two figures emerged, equally ominous and frantic. In a split second, they charged into the crowd, eyes darting, searching. "Lucas, we've got to go!" Ethan shouted, his voice strained and raw. At that moment, Lucas thought he saw desperation mixed with fear flash across Ethan's face, like a shadow preparing to swallow them whole. But then everything froze. The bloodied man suddenly jerked upright, gasping for air, eyes wild with terror. "They know! They know! Everything!" he screamed. Lucas's heart slammed in his chest. What did that mean? Before he could process, the shadows coalesced, surrounding them, tension thickening the air until it felt suffocating. "Run!" Ethan shouted, grabbing Lucas's arm, pulling him toward the chaos. Ella clutched his hand tightly, a terrified whimper escaping her lips. But then Lucas felt a pull, an awful sensation wrenching at his gut. Everything within him screamed to run. Yet he hesitated, a dark seed of doubt gnawing at him as they moved. Suddenly, the woman stepped forward, eyes locked on Lucas. "You have to understand, the truth isn't just about who he is. It's about who you were." In that heart-stopping moment, the crowd erupted. The figures moved in. Shadows flickering until suddenly the lights cut out, plunging everything into darkness. Lucas's heart raced as he squinted into the void, fear wrapping around him. Then whispers filled the air, voices trembling with urgency. And in the stillness, reality began to twist. "Who am I?" he barely managed to whisper. But no one answered. What started as a rescue was spiraling into something far darker, and the weight of uncertainty felt heavier than ever. The darkness closed in, And Lucas felt himself teetering on the brink of chaos and revelation. The truth was lurking, waiting to pounce, and he could sense it creeping closer. The darkness closed in around Lucas, thick and suffocating. His heart raced, confusion tugging at him like a riptide. "Who am I?" he whispered, but nobody answered. Instinctively, he pulled Ella closer, her small hand trembling in his grip. Then a low rumble echoed through the night, vibrating in the ground beneath them. Suddenly, the air felt charged, as if something monumental was building right within the storm swirling around them. The whispers intensified, a chaotic backdrop to the panic rising in his chest. Ethan was shouting, but the words faded into the cacophony. The shadows were shifting, and Lucas felt a jolt of something he couldn't name, an urgency that ignited every nerve in his body. "Get her out of here!" the woman demanded, glaring at Ethan with a mix of fury and desperation. The crowd swelled, pushing and pulling, the tension like a rubber band, stretched too tight. And then it happened. Without warning, the ground trembled violently. A blinding light erupted overhead, illuminating the street in a harsh glow that made Lucas squint. "Look out!" he yelled, instinctively shielding Ella. Everything felt surreal, like a nightmare crashing down with deafening force. Then there was an explosion, the sound booming like thunder, jarring the air. A nearby building's glass shattered in a spray, raining down on the horrified crowd. Lucas stumbled backward, pulling Ella with him as people screamed and scrambled to get away. But in that chaotic moment, something else caught his eye. A glint, a flash of silver, spiraling through the air. His heart dropped as he realized what it was. A gun. Time slowed. The scene unfolded like a tragic play as he reached for Ella, the innocent child caught in this storm. And before he could react, a shot rang out, the crack echoing painfully loud. Ethan threw himself in front of Ella, just as Lucas lunged forward. The shot hit, and everything shattered. Ethan collapsed, falling to the ground in slow motion, his face a mask of shock and pain. "Dad!" Ella screamed, her voice piercing through the chaos. Lucas's breath caught in his throat as he dove down, feeling the world spin wildly around him. "Ethan!" Panic clawed at him, fear washing over him like a wave. He didn't understand. How could this happen? He reached for Ethan, his fingers shaking as he grasped the fallen man's shoulder. But then Lucas looked around. The crowd was frozen, eyes wide, mouths hanging open. The atmosphere thickened, tension rolling off people in waves. Whispers flew like confetti, and Lucas could hear snippets. "Who shot? Is he dead?" Then Ella's voice broke through the din, raw with terror. "Get away from him!" Lucas felt the weight of the world pressing down, suffocating him. How could everything fall apart in a single heartbeat? He turned back to Ethan. "Hang on." His voice quaked. Ethan's eyes fluttered open, a flicker of recognition. "Lucas, he gasped, blood pooling around him. But the words trailed off, and the panic in Lucas's chest turned to horror. And then the woman stepped forward, her expression shifting. "You must know the truth now. Her voice was urgent, and Lucas felt her intensity wash over him. In that moment, everything he thought he understood shifted. With an earth-shattering clatter, the gunman slipped into the light, their face obscured, but the glint of recognition caught Lucas's breath. It was someone he knew. "Why?" he gasped, dread sinking deep into his bones. Why would they do this? The truth was spiraling just out of reach, and yet it felt closer than ever. What had he missed? What had he done? His heart raced with desperate questions. Then everything shifted again as the woman raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "The curse is not just about you, Lucas. It's about all of us. Time is running out." His world tilted, new revelations crashing in, and Lucas could only stare in disbelief. Who was he really? What had he begun? And as his heart pounded in his chest, he realized nothing would ever be the same again. The world was shifting, crumbling around Lucas, and just as he thought he could catch a breath, the unexpected came crashing down again. "You are one of us, but not who you think you are." The woman's words pierced through him like shards of glass. He staggered back, mind racing. He thought he understood the chaos of his life, the darkness surrounding Ethan, but this revelation flipped everything upside down. "What do you mean?" he demanded, uncertainty swelling inside him, battling with a flicker of hope. Ella's small face twisted in confusion, looking between her father and the woman, her innocent eyes wide. "What's going on? I don't understand." Her voice trembled, and Lucas felt a rush of protectiveness toward her. She was just a child, caught in this web of secrets that seemed to grow tighter with every heartbeat. Before anyone could respond, a loud crash echoed through the night, vibrating in the ground beneath them. Suddenly, the air felt charged, as if something monumental was building right within the storm swirling around them. The whispers intensified, a chaotic backdrop to the panic rising in his chest. "Get her out of here," the woman demanded, glaring at Ethan with a mix of fury and desperation. The crowd swelled, pushing and pulling. The tension, like a rubber band, stretched too tight. "Stay together," Ethan yelled, urgency etched on his face. But Lucas could feel something boiling beneath the surface. It was all too much, too chaotic. Then it happened. Without warning, the ground trembled violently. A blinding light erupted overhead, illuminating the street in a harsh glow that made Lucas squint. "Look out!" he yelled, instinctively shielding Ella. Everything felt surreal, like a nightmare crashing down with deafening force. Another explosion shook the ground. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the blinding light. A man in a sharp suit, with slicked back hair and a cruel smile. He looked so out of place against the backdrop of panic. "Ethan!" he shouted, voice ringing clear over the chaos. Lucas turned wide-eyed as the man raised a hand. "Victor!" Ethan breathed, his face drained of colour. The crowd gasped as if the air had been sucked out of the moment. Lucas stared at Ethan, confusion mixing with dread. "Who is he?" he demanded, but the urgency pulled tight around him, choking the words. "This isn't over," Victor sneered. You thought you could hide forever. You thought the past was behind you. He looked pointedly at Lucas. But it's time to face the truth. In that very heartbeat, everything Lucas thought he knew shattered. As if on cue, Ella's hands flew to her head. "No! Stop it!" she cried, a wave of agony washing over her small voice. Lucas's heart pounded in his chest as he watched her. There was a spark in her eyes, something fierce and powerful. It flickered, lighting the way for the impossible. "Ella! Honey, don't!" Ethan shouted, rushing toward her. But the ground shook again, and then, before anyone could process what was happening, Ella screamed, her voice rising above everything. A sound that felt like the sky itself was tearing apart. Blue light enveloped her, pulsating with power. Time froze. Lucas couldn't breathe. Everyone was caught in the whirlwind of light and chaos, eyes wide and mouths agape. A realization unfurled inside Lucas like the dawn breaking through the darkness. She's powerful, he thought, feeling the ground tremble beneath him. But then the light shot skyward in a blinding flash, illuminating everything. Lucas shielded his eyes and gasped when the light receded. Ella stood taller, but something was off. There was a look in her eyes, a shift that sent a chill down Lucas's spine. "You don't know what she'll become," Victor sneered, his voice smooth, laced with malice. "The monster in her blood is waking, just like it did in you." Lucas stumbled, heart racing. What did he mean? The words hung heavy, slamming into him like a freight train. He could feel the eyes of the crowd on him, questions darting around like fireflies in the darkness. Everything was unraveling. Ties were snapping, secrets bubbling to the surface. But as the truth came crushing in, he had only one thought. The last piece of the puzzle was poised to shatter everything. And as the echoes of Ella's scream faded, the world held its breath. What would happen next? What lay in the depths of their intertwined fates? The unknowing loomed over them like a dark cloud, and all he could do was brace himself for the storm. Whatever came next, it felt like the beginning of something terrifying and inevitable. The world held its breath, the air thick with tension. Lucas could see the flickers of understanding fly between Ethan, Ella, and the woman. Everything felt like it was on fire, racing toward an unknown conclusion. What had he missed? The question hung in his mind like a lost echo. The blinding light flickered and faded, and a chill rushed in, cool like the winter's breath. Ella stood there, eyes wide, body trembling. "You think you can control it?" Victor jeered, voice dripping with disdain. "But it's already too late." "What do you mean?" Lucas shouted, desperation bubbling over. But Ella's face twisted, a storm brewing beneath her surface. Her small hands gripped her head, as if wrestling with something inside her. "No! Stop it!" she cried again, voice breaking. The room seemed to vibrate with energy. "Ella, don't!" Ethan lunged forward, panic racing through him. And just like that, it happened. A wave surged from Ella, a shockwave that split the air and knocked everyone back. Lucas stumbled, eyes wide, heart hammering. The world around him spun, people crashing to the ground like leaves in a whirlwind. He felt the heat radiate off her, a hot pulse of energy that surged through him. Then, silence. It swallowed the chaos whole. Lucas glanced around, breath hitching in his throat, and saw people frozen mid-motion, expressions caught in shock or fear. Then another sound broke the stillness, soft and cluttered, like the rattle of distant thunder. Lucas shifted, heart racing as he turned back to Ella. In that moment, something shattered within Ella. A cloud of darkness engulfed her, swirling like ink in water. Her form warped. It changed in an instant, and the girl he knew began to disappear. Eyes widened. Lucas felt sick. "Ella, no!" Ethan shouted, rushing toward her. But before he could reach her, the darkness bubbled over, pouring out like a flood. Then with a bone-chilling crack, a figure emerged from the dark mist, vast and towering. It loomed above them, malevolent and terrifying. It wasn't just Ella anymore. Something ancient and ferocious took root, latching onto her innocence. The crowd gasped, and Lucas felt the air thickening around him. "Ethan!" Lucas yelled, his voice rising above the chaos. "What is happening?" Ethan broke, grief and shock consuming him. "I didn't know. I thought—" He faltered, fear creeping onto his face. "I thought she was safe." The towering figure shifted, eyes glowing like embers of dread. "You've awakened her true nature." The voice boomed like thunder, deep and echoing. "Both of you will pay for trying to hide." No one could breathe. Lucas felt his feet rooted to the ground, heart crashing against his ribs. "What do you mean?" he choked, panic gnawing at him. The walls pressed in, the weight of unease closing off all escape routes. Victor watched, with a smirk, satisfaction glistening in his eyes. "The curse binds you all, tied to blood and shadow, and with it, the past. The truth is, Ella is more than you think. And so are you." Connections snapped in Lucas's mind, the threads of his reality unraveling at the seams. "Ella, what is this?" he gasped, the shadows veiling her face. But she didn't respond. The figure laughed. A sound that froze Lucas to his core. Time slowed as the reality sunk in. Ella wasn't just a girl. She was a vessel, the embodiment of something primal. He realized then the monster wasn't just a metaphor. Terror twisted through him as he stumbled back. "No!" Lucas whispered, the truth hitting him like a punch to the gut. And as Ella, no, the creature that used to be her, swayed forward, shadows spilling from her form like smoke, Lucas felt the ground tremble beneath him. Everything he thought he understood was collapsing. In that final heartbeat, Ella turned her gaze, and for a fleeting second, he saw a flicker of recognition, a plea for help. It hadn't completely consumed her, but then the creature laughed again. And with that sound, Lucas knew nothing would ever be the same. Moments stretched into eternity, and as the unexpected unfolded, darkness loomed, swallowing hope. What had been unveiled was far beyond anything he could imagine. The question lingered in the air. Who was truly the monster? Ella's transformation shook the ground beneath them. The towering figure loomed large, eyes glowing, shadowy tendrils writhing as if hungry for something. Lucas felt his heart racing, fear gripping him like a vice. This can't be happening, he thought. You into this mess. Lucas's breath hitched. It was all tumbling down. No, he shouted, trying to grasp the reality of the situation. Ella, please, you have to come back to us. Just then, a tremor rippled through the crowd. Murmurs of fear swirling like a storm. Faces filled with shock, eyes wide, as people began to back away, unsure of what would happen next. Ella, focus on my voice, the woman urged, stepping closer. Her face had softened, and for a second, Lucas could see the motherly warmth in her eyes. Remember who you are. In that moment, something sparkled in Ella's glowing gaze. It flickered, as if a battle was raging within her. Lucas felt the lump in his throat tighten. He could see in her shaken expression. She was there, fighting against the darkness. Time slowed. You're strong, Ella, he yelled over the panic. We believe in you. The creature's form wavered, pulsating with dark energy as Ella closed her eyes tight. I am, not just this. I won't give in, she screamed, voice raw, shaking the very air around them. With a blinding flash, Ella raised her arms toward the sky, and a burst of light shot upward like a firework. People covered their eyes, shielding against the dazzling brilliance. Even the darkness flickered, losing its grip. Ethan reached out, hope fueling every desperate bit of him. That's it, Ella. Push it away. Show it who you are. And then, with a surge that felt like a tidal wave, the creature shrieked, voices merging, both Ella's and something dark. Shadows recoiled, dissolving into the air. Those who had watched held their breaths, stunned by the sight unfolding through the chaos. As Ella fell to her knees, gasping, the light enveloped her before fading, revealing a trembling child once more, eyes wide but clear. I did it? Yes! Ethan pulled her into his arms, relief washing over him. Tears streamed down his face. Amazing job, Ella, Lucas added, emotion thickening his voice. The crowd erupted, surprised murmurs flowing. People found their voices again, relief lifting the heavy air weighed with tension. But not for long. Victor stepped forward, glaring at them. You think it's over? This is just the beginning. You can't escape your fates. With that, sirens echoed closer, flashing lights cutting through the shadows. The police would soon arrive, but the danger wasn't over yet. Lucas turned to Ethan, determination brewing within him. We need to leave, fast. Right, Ethan agreed, holding Ella close. But where? They'll be on us in seconds. The old woman, Lucas started, glancing at the chaos behind them. She knows. We need her. Tension buzzed through them as they took off, weaving through the crowd, still clutching at pieces of the chaos. Ella's small hand squeezed Lucas's as they ran. But then, even amidst the confusion, Lucas felt a flicker of hope rising. There was still a fight ahead, but they had each other. Pain and fear gripped them, but united they could face anything. As they escaped down the alley, the shadows shifted and twirled behind them, echoing with uncertainty. What secrets lay ahead? Lucas didn't know, but he knew one thing. This was far from over yet. Before the next twist in their story unfolded, a voice pierced the air. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive chapter in this wild adventure. Smash that like button to help us reach more hearts like yours. Flood the comments with your thoughts and theories on what just happened. And don't you dare wait another second to share this with 5 friends who need to dive into the mystery. Let's grow this community together.